Welcome to the HITea With Grace podcast, where we spill the tea on HIT. I'm thrilled to be here at the ViVE conference with Nadine Peever, Healthcare Interoperability Principal at HTD. HTD.
People get that messed up all the time.
Tell me about it. Tell me about the career path that brought you to HTD.
Yeah. So I've actually been in interoperability since I was a wee young girl.
Space for a while now.
Yep. So fun fact about me, I actually started out at Meditech, of all places. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And a friend of mine was like, you want to come interview here? Let's see how it goes. And that was my intro to health tech. One day I was driving home and I was listening to this podcast and I heard Jonathan Bush on this podcast. And I was like, this guy's really smart. I really like what he's doing. I really want to get behind his mission. So I applied to every single job I was qualified for at HITea Health. Actually kind of embarrassing thinking about it now. But I applied to like a dozen different jobs. I was like, whatever I can do, help this guy out. And so I landed in interoperability, doing lab partnerships and lab integrations. So I built these integrations with LabCorp and Quest and tiny little labs. And so I was there for a while. While I was there, a former VP, Evan Grossman, who's at Zeus, he was like, hey, we're building this new thing. You want to get involved? We'd love to have you join. And another funny situation where I was like, you don't have a website. What am I doing? And I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's go for this. So I joined their team doing data partnerships and data acquisition. So working with Quest, LabCorp, all these different partners. And that was when I really dove in head first. And I decided to make a shift into consulting. And that's why I eventually landed at HTD. While I was at Zeus, I met Brendan Keeler, one of my really good pals now. And then more recently, he was like, hey, we need some help. You want to come join us? And that tends to be the trend, right? Is someone that you've worked with is like, hey, I want to come work with you again. I want to come join our mission, which is a really fun thing. And so I've been in for 2 months now.
It's funny that you say that because Jonathan Bush has inspired me at so many points in my career too. So it does not shock me that you would say, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. He just says it like it is. And it's like he doesn't have anything to lose and he just wants to make healthcare better. And there's so many folks in the industry that are like that just want to make healthcare better. And I actually consider you to be one of those people now. You are my Jonathan Bush. So let's talk interoperability.
I love it. It's like you just need more people who are candid and really willing to speak about what they're passionate about. And you're like, all right, I'm going to put it out there no matter what I have to lose.
Tell me, as you're in the space, where do you see the biggest gaps in healthcare information exchange today? And when it comes to, ensuring that seamless care across multiple providers, like what are you seeing as the biggest spaces?
It's been really interesting. I think behavioral health has consistently throughout my career been this common thread. Behavioral health providers were left out of the HITech Act. So you see this huge discrepancy with technology and innovation. So you have providers that are still on paper or using outdated technology. And we're seeing such a slower adoption for EHRs within the behavioral health space, which overall has such a tremendous impact on care coordination and has a big impact on patient care. In the behavioral health space, we have all these unknowns around providers who are like, well, I don't even know if I can share my patient's information, which causes all of these challenges. And not long after my surgery, I fell into a pretty bad pit of depression. And I went to my doctor. I was like, is it my birth control? Or is it burnout? Is it adjustment disorder? And just like the fact that all these different providers aren't talking and there's this hesitancy to share data just leaves patients in the dark trying to figure out what could actually be going on here.
So what are some of the practical steps that healthcare organizations can take to improve interoperability and solve this problem, improve connectivity just generally? Where do you see the biggest opportunities for improvement?
I think there's kind of a call to action as to how do we incentivize providers to adopt these technologies? Can we do a high-tech part two where we're able to offer these incentives to push behavioral health providers to adopt these technologies? I mean, even until recently, we're only recently seeing this emergence of mental health specific tools. HITea Health recently launched their behavioral health product, and it has to be a different product. You have to be meeting the needs of these providers. Mental health is a different space than physical health. Not only is it the adoption of tools, but even just putting the tools out there and developing the tools that actually meet their needs.
It's a ton of sense. Thinking about the legal and regulatory considerations in the space, what are some of the things that the industry has to be thinking about that impacts EHR integrations, data sharing initiatives, and things like that?
I think a big piece that I've spent a lot of time thinking about is it's 42 CFR Part 2 is in the behavioral health space, people don't know what they can and cannot share which means there's less data sharing, there's less interoperability because providers are hesitant to share out because they don't know, like, am I allowed to share Nadine's mental health records with her provider? Can we have it actually leave our health system? Because it's not even just like, at that point, oftentimes it's even just like faxing my records. And providers, I've been working on a project where we're interviewing behavioral health providers, and we hear that constantly. Providers don't know what they can and cannot share when it comes to especially regulated data. So
that makes it really tricky because they don't want to do the wrong thing.
They're trying to, I think by and large, I suspect they're trying to do the right thing. But again, it ends up being a detriment to patient care, which is, as a patient, I try to be very mindful of this. It's okay, well, let me come at it from my interoperability strategy consultant, but also as a patient, what's the right thing and how do we do this at the end of the day? What's the impact on patients?
I think it helps it to think about it as two different hats, right? It is that interoperability strategist and it is that patient. And I want to thank you for sharing your story with me about endometriosis. As you're in this space, in the strategy space and digital health, like what innovations in healthcare technology could make a real difference in helping people like yourself get a more timely diagnosis?
They say that on average, it takes a decade for a woman to get diagnosed with endometriosis.
They're like, it's just mental health problems.
Oh, you have a really bad period. Once I figured out what was going on, I looked back and I was like, oh, I had this symptom, I had this symptom, I had this symptom. But what's tricky with endometriosis is that it can only be diagnosed with, or in the vast majority of cases, it can only be diagnosed through laparoscopic surgery. Right now, there's no real blood test. And there's a lot of amazing companies out there working on trying to target the biomarkers to help at least figure out, okay, well, is there an easier way of getting an answer versus...
Because clinical decision support could help.
Exactly it. Machine learning, we're seeing companies like Lassa Health is doing a phenomenal job with this. They're taking these data sets and applying advanced analytics and machine learning to help diagnose patients and say, okay, well, here are all the common threads. Roughly 10% of women have endometriosis. For me, I wasn't diagnosed. I had stage 4 endometriosis by the time I was diagnosed, which means it was deep infiltrating. It was like my insides were all glued together with this tissue. After my visit with my doctor, I was tearing up driving home and I was just so upset that I felt like my body was destroying itself. I was like, why is it doing this to me? But going back to your original question, clinical decision support and being able to apply advanced analytics to these data sets to help diagnose women so much sooner, even if just giving women answers so that they don't feel like they're crazy. Because for so long, I'd go to the doctor and I'm like, is this normal? Is it not? And I think a lot of times we just sort of assume like it hurts so much, but I think this is just part of being a woman. And it turns out it
absolutely. And it's just insane that it impacts so many women. And yet this is still the reality of the situation we are in this day and age where there's so many AI options in other areas where this could easily be.
Yeah. And on a similar note is AI imaging. AI imaging is actually another really fascinating piece. And there's so much opportunity. So being able to leverage AI to detect an endometrioma. An endometrioma is a chocolate cyst that's a sign of deep infiltrating endometriosis, that was actually how I was diagnosed. They found a 5-centimeter cyst on one of my ovaries. And they're like, yeah, that's why you're in agony every single month. By the time I went in for surgery, they were like, oh, you had a second one on your right ovary. We didn't even see it.
Wow.
And it was 2 centimeters large, which is like, that is not small.
A golf ball.
Yeah. And like, they missed that. And I'm like, so one of the things because it also worries me because what if it were something more nefarious? And so what we're seeing is I've seen it specifically with breast cancer where
I just talked.
It's amazing. So a good friend of mine, Terry Kim, is at Lunit. And they're working with they're amazing. I am this is one of the pieces that I'm so freaking excited about. And I'll shout it from the freaking mountains is like, we need this so I go in for scans every 6 months to make sure that there isn't anything nefarious showing because your risk for ovarian cancer goes up a whole lot. Enough that I'm like, okay. And it affects, I'm in my 30s and there's all these big decisions that you're trying to make and that it affects a lot of these decisions. And so with Luna and Volpera, the best people, you can detect this and I can find it so much sooner before it becomes anything because once you're diagnosed with ovarian cancer, it's not an easy thing to... Most times they detect it and end up so late in the game and very scary as a woman. 2-centimeter cyst, what else are we missing? And can we leverage companies like Luna and Volpera to
find other things.
And I talk to my friend Terry about this all the time. I'm like, how can we I want to see how do I get my provider, my doctor on this?
I love the way you think. And I'm so sorry that your own patient journey has been so painful and long, but it's interesting to see the way it's changed your brain and how you think about interoperability and how you think about AI in healthcare. Mm-hmm. What are some of the changes you've noticed?
Well, also funny you say that. I always think, I feel very lucky that it was me or that this has happened to me because it gives an opportunity for me to learn more about this. And then I feel like I could be almost like an evangelist for the solutions out there. I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad that I can handle this. I know I'm strong enough to deal with this and then hopefully educate others. What was the funniest thing for me was, so I've worked for 2 different EHRs, HITea Health and Meditech. This is my hot take. This is probably a controversial statement, but for the longest time I was like, and I still truly believe this, everyone should use whatever system is right for them. And then briefly while I was going through this, I'm like, everyone should just use the same system because they can talk to each other.
They have to bear the brunt of fragmented records.
Exactly. And my psychiatrist to talk to my surgeon, to talk to my OBGYN, talk to my endocrinologist. And having them on the same platform makes it so much easier as a patient. And I can see why people are loyal to staying within one health system because you're not shifting platforms. From a patient's perspective, I was briefly like, just everyone use the same thing until we get to a point where interoperability is, I frustratingly was like, can you just all use the same thing?
I get it. And I almost died because of healthcare record fragmentation and misdiagnoses. It's eventually figuring out I had a very easily discoverable and treatable problem. It took me 1.5 years to find the solution and almost died in the process. And so I also feel the same way. I just want you all to communicate.
Can you all just work?
We missed a step the day 1 in the ER because you were all not communicating.
It's unbelievable. It makes me so mad. And there's all these different things at play. And I'm like, can we just stop? What hurts me is the idea that patient records are dollar signs in some cases. And I'm like, that's why I'm passionate about information blocking or anti-information blocking is we cannot do this because it's killing people. Yeah. I've been in healthcare and health tech for a very long time, and I have had a hard time navigating the system. And I'm like, and I know people, I have all these connections to leverage, and I'm still spinning my wheels. I'm like, how do I make this work? Should I just start carrying my records in a binder? It's very frustrating.
Hard to know the solution, but I'm so thrilled that smart people like you are trying to figure this out, right? That you've been in this space, you've worked with the EHRs, and you are understanding how interoperability and health information exchange works. And you're really trying to pave a path for patients like yourself to have a different future. So thank you for that.
Of course.
Our listeners love to hear about trends in the space, but they also love to learn about our leaders and what habits they have to just help them work their best and make a difference. So tell me, as a leader, as someone who works in healthcare technology, what are things that you do in your daily life?
So I work my best. I'm a very collaborative person. I'm an ambivert, but I work so well whenever I can. I'm also an external processor. To be my best self, I do my best work when I'm able to have that sounding board. And so I sort of have a personal board of directors that I pretty much run every single life decision by, and who have just been able to offer me tremendous feedback, being able to go to them and say, okay, I'm thinking through this problem. How would you think about it? Am I thinking about it correctly? And having that personal board of directors has been a complete game changer for me.
So interesting. I always love when I hear from people, and that is such a good thought. And I'm thinking about who's my board of directors, and I'm sure you guys are thinking about that too. Do I have a board of directors? I need ones as good as Nadine's.
If you're ever making any kind of life decision, it's great to have those people that you can trust that they'll call you on your bullshit. If you're like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this all the time. I'm like, what if I just quit the industry and start a farm? But it's good to have that sounding board and be like, okay, am I making a rash decision? If I go to HITea, what do you guys think about that? Resounding yes from the board of directors. I think anyone's phenomenal team there.
And I think about you too, and you're such a great community builder. What are some of the things that you've been doing in Atlanta to kind of bring folks together?
I love it. One of the proudest things I've done actually is my friend Alexa Morris and I, we started this health tech community in Atlanta about 3 years ago. We kicked off this happy hour with the idea of just okay, people want to get together. We all work from home. let's organize a quick happy hour, see how it goes. And by and large, we saw that there was this huge appetite for in-person collaboration. Since then, it's been about 3 years. We've been hosting this monthly happy hour, and it brings folks from all over health tech, from startups to maybe more old school. We get some payers and health systems, but by and large, some pretty innovative people come out. And I tell people, because I hate networking, as I'm here at a conference, I love people. My networking style is very genuine. And so I try to say it's not working for people who hate networking. You don't need to come with a sales pitch. I just want you to come and tell me what you care about, what problems you're trying to solve, and maybe there's an opportunity for collaboration.
That's amazing. So for our listeners that want to hear more about that, where can they look that up?
Yeah, so we have a LinkedIn page. It's just Bonfire ATL, but it's spelled BONNE, Fire, FIRE, ATL. If anyone's interested in starting their own community in their own city, I'm always happy to chat.
Well, I'll have to think about it in the New Haven area now. That would be wonderful. So where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, you can find me. I'm on LinkedIn. If you just look me up, Nadine Peever. I am the only Nadine Peever in the entire world, so it should not be hard to find me. But yeah, I'm always willing to chat. I say something like when folks are like, oh, what should I, like any career advice, what should I do? I always say, just talk to people that are doing interesting things. One of my big takeaways whenever I was diagnosed with endometriosis was I reached out on Health Tech Nerds, the Slack, which is one of my favorite communities of all time. If you're in health tech, you should join Health Tech Nerds. Great group. I reached out on Slack and I was like, hey, y'all, this is what I'm going through. Is anyone building in the space? I'd love to learn from you and see what you're doing and see if there's an opportunity to collaborate. And I just learned so much from so many other mission-driven women. And it was one of the best things I've done.
I love it. Well, thank you for being generous with your insights and your experience. It was really great learning from you.
Thank you so much for having me, Grace. This is so wonderful.
Thanks. And thanks to you folks for joining us too. Check out the HITea With Grace podcast for more interviews with great guests like Nadine today. Cheers.
Like a Girl Media is more than a media network. It's a community. We want to meet you and amplify your voice and the voices of outstanding women innovating in healthcare. Interested in starting your own podcast or hosting an event near you? Connect with us online or in person. We're here to support and empower you.